let's talk supersedure. Supersedure is one of those weird words in the beekeeping world that we kick around a lot. I want to demystify it for you just a little bit. Supersedure is simply the replacement of a queen. It's that simple. You've got a queen, the bees want another one, and so they attempt to replace her. Now, some people split hairs and say there's things like emergency supersedure where the queen is gone and the bees in that colony need to replace her. Or there's just typical supersedure where they've got a queen and they want to replace her. In this context, I'm simply saying supersedure is the replacement of a queen. Bees can recognize when their queen is failing for whatever reason. Maybe she's too old, maybe her egg output is decreased, maybe she's conferring bad genetics, maybe she's laying disproportionately more drones than workers. Lots of things can happen, but worker bees can detect these failing queens and attempt to replace it. So in this video, I want to talk a little bit about recognizing supersedure for what it is and determining if you need to do something from a management perspective to address it. So again, supersedure's replacement of a queen. How might you recognize it when you go into your colony? So when I go into my colonies, the things that lead me to suspect that I've got a supersedure event is I start seeing queen cells while there are still eggs, a young larvae, or potentially even a queen running around in the nest. So how could all of these things happen simultaneously? Well, sometimes worker bees will try to replace their queen even if she's present. And occasionally, I've seen a queen otherwise look good to me, lay lots of eggs, have a big old nice, beautiful brood pattern, and be present, and bees start building queen cells. In that case, if to me, everything looks good with the queen, she's plump, she doesn't look maimed, she doesn't look injured, I happen to know how old she is because I put her in there myself, or I know when they made a new one, if she's laying a big solid brood pattern and the colony otherwise looks good, then I'll remove all of those queen cells and just say, hey, that's a one-off, I'm not too worried. But what about when the presence of those queen cells coincides with some of these other traits I've just mentioned? Failing queen, maimed queen, old queen, etc. Then I start to think to myself, maybe they are beginning to supersedure. So seeing queen cells in the presence of a queen can take me that next step to supersedure. Another trick, and this is so subjective that I hate to mention it, but it's generally a good thing to follow, is where are those queen cells? What do I mean by that? Well, let's think about a frame. You take out a frame, and when you're looking at it, it's essentially two-dimensional, right? You're looking at a flat surface. When bees want to make a new queen for swarm purposes, those new queens result from a planned requeening event. The bees typically go to the edges of that frame and develop queen cells in which the queen lays, and they will have these really fat queen cells that are very big, very mature, and it coincides with something like swarm season. So purposeful requeening for swarm purposes often happens around the edges of the frame. Now think about supersedure. Supersedure is usually an emergency response. The queen is failing, the bees detect it, and they have to go to the youngest available female larvae to start pushing them in the direction of becoming a queen. So go back to that frame. Queens start laying eggs in the center of the frame and they spiral outwards and they just repeat this pattern and repeat this pattern and repeat this pattern. Let's say your failing queen laid her last egg 5 days ago. So the larvae in that comb are 2 days old or older. 3 days for the hatching of an egg, 2 days old of larvae, so 3 and 2 is 5. So the queen quit laying eggs 5 days ago, you've got 2-day-old larvae. So now what they're going to do is they're going to go to those larvae and start pushing them from workers towards queen. And what you tend to get then are queen cells showing up on the face of the comb around where the brood pattern would be. Again, these is overgeneralization, but these are clues to you that you're starting to see supersedure. Furthermore, supersedure cells often aren't as big as these planned swarm cells that are really fat. And that has to do with, again, it's a response to an emergency and not necessarily a planned event. Research has clearly demonstrated that when larvae are tended from a very young age, usually 12 hours older, to become a queen, they develop in bigger cells, they get more food, and they become bigger individuals themselves. But if workers have to go to larvae that are 24 or worse yet, 48 hours or older, then you start getting inferior queens. We call them pseudo-queens. The workers can't give them enough royal jelly early enough. They can't push them fast enough in the direction of becoming a queen. So you get smaller-bodied queens that develop in these smaller cells that typically show up on the edges of the brood pattern. So when I see these small queen cells on the edges of the brood pattern, and I'm able to couple that with some clear evidence of a failing queen, then I start thinking they are trying to replace their queen. Well, why is supersedure a problem? It's not always a problem. Sometimes it could be happening during production season. You need to remedy it now. Sometimes it could happen during winter when there's no drones with which that new queen can mate. But most of the time when they're superseding, it's during a time of the year that it can be fixed, and maybe it's not a problem at all. But it can be a problem again if it occurs during those critical times or when it leads to the production of an inferior queen. Let's back up and think about this. Oftentimes, what causes workers to initiate the supersedure process is a failing queen. Failing queens are accompanied by collateral damage. This means that they're not just there today and gone tomorrow. There was some pattern of failure leading up to their replacement. Maybe they laid, as I said earlier, their last egg 5 days ago. So now when the workers go to make those queens, the youngest available larvae are 2 days old or older. This will lead to the production of a smaller queen that is generally inferior. So supersedure can be a problem based on timing, yes, but more so because it can lead to poorer queens that will end up taking over the nest that themselves may be destined for failure because they don't mate appropriately or have the egg-laying capacity. So when I go into a colony and I see queen cells showing up on the face of the comb, I ask myself, is the queen present and is she good? If she is, I remove the cells. If she's present but not doing well, spotty brood pattern, failing in other ways, then I might take the step to remove her and requeen that colony a different way. I always suggest when you're requeening colonies, you check out the requeening video that we have here at the University of Florida. I show 4 different ways to requeen colonies. So if you spot a supersedure event and you feel that you need to do something about it, watch that video, you'll be empowered on what to do. But recognizing supersedure is a good trait in beekeepers because it gives you the necessary confidence in needing to address that problem before it becomes a bigger problem in your colony.